Right.
All right. We are back with another episode of the AAPCA podcast. As I said to you guys before, this is part 2, as I promised you. First episode with Les Spellman, we discussed, just a little bit about his background, just kind of how he got to where he got to. Again, if I haven't told you already, he's the man. He's Mr. Speed. Speedy, like I said, he makes Speedy Gonzalez's everywhere. This guy knows speed big time. So
Thank you.
I wanted to bring this man back to kind of have more of a talk about the science portion. Last time we talked about how he built up his business, how he got into this space. Today, we'd like to talk shop. Again, this is a master class for you guys. Again, it's your boy, Larry Howard, Coach Proof, and we are super excited to have Les Spellman. Thank you again for hopping on for another time, man.
Of course. Thank you. This
Les,
is
are you still
awesome,
there?
bro. Yeah.
Okay,
Can you hear
cool.
me?
Awesome.
Yeah. There we go.
Yeah, I hear you.
My Wi-Fi just got on. Okay, we're good. Thank you, bro.
Yep,
I
we're good.
appreciate you having me. Yeah.
I appreciate you. I appreciate you being here. So let's talk about speed, because there are a couple of things that we've gone over just in our conversation. What are some of the misconceptions, or I don't know if it's misconceptions, but just errant practices when people approach training speed,
Yeah. I would say
in your
the
opinion?
main thing is that people think it's this highly technical task where it's like you have to be a biomechanist, you have to be an expert in understanding like how to run. And I think because of that, a lot of people just don't do it. Like, I think the industry is coming around to more and more people are doing it, but there's still, it's not high school and junior high school guys and middle school coaches, elementary school coaches. Some of them are just like, you're fast or you're not. And I think what they end up doing is staying away from doing speed because they feel like they don't know how. And I think if you really break it down, like speed is, yes, there's technical elements to it, but a lot of what we're doing in speed and what we're even at the highest levels, what we're doing are influencing physical factors, setting up the environment to run fast, and then finding ways to microdose it throughout the week. But overall, I think it's a lot less complicated than people make it. And that could be why it took so long to kind of get it going the way it is now.
So when it comes to speed, and I know we've discussed this, what are your priorities and preference when it comes to what you focus on with the athletes? I think we talked about drills versus, walk me through.
Yeah.
I'm an athlete. I come to you. I want to get a little bit faster, coach. I want to be able to run my 40 faster. What are we looking at? What are we focusing on?
Yeah. So I'll break it into sections. So if you're coming to me as a college athlete, going to the NFL and you're doing the NFL combine, it's very different than if you're an athlete that's on a team and working. So I'll handle both of those. So the main thing when we work with guys for the combine is we have a very, very clear onboarding process and we layer it into 3 tiers. So the first tier is structural. So it's how you're built. So you want to understand, like if you have super long femurs and really long tibias, you're going to run a little bit different. If you have extremely long torso and a short legs, you're going to run different. If you don't have range of motion at the ankle, you're going to run different. If you don't have hip internal rotation, external rotation, hip flexion, hip extension, you're going to run different. So I want to know how you're built. Once we know how you're built, we do some physical tests to see how do you produce forces. So everything from a CMJ to a CMJ rebound to a mid thigh pull to the Terra test, like you could use like a ton of different ways to analyze someone's physical capacities. Ours are simple. We want to know how much force you can produce total. We want to know how much force you can produce single leg. We want to know how much force you can produce at the ankle, the knee, and the hip. Then we want to know how powerful you are, CMJ. We want to know how you rebound, CMJ rebound. That's it. So those are our physical tests. And once we understand physically how an athlete produces force, we could see, okay, is somebody fast because of their physical things? Or are they fast in spite of their physical things? And the last part is just the technical piece at the top of it is how do they coordinate what they have into how they run. So the way that I look at it is most of how people run is dictated from a combination of structure and physical qualities. So if I'm built a certain way, I can produce force really, really well. And it's probably going to determine how I run. Like if, you have really long legs, really long femurs, really long tibias, you're very reactive. You don't produce a lot of force though, but you're very reactive. it's going to dictate how you run. So me telling you to run a certain way is not going to be that impactful. It's which lever do I pull? So for some of our top athletes, the lever that we're pulling is structural. Like, oh, you don't have enough range of motion in the ankle to get in your stance. So of course you're not going to be good at it. Or you don't have enough hip internal rotation to have an effective hip extension. Okay, so we're going to impact that. Or sometimes it's your body fat's just too high. So we need to impact that. Or your weight's too high. So there's levers you can pull without ever training speed. And then we talk about the speed part. But that's the easy part. Like you could buy an Altus program from Mo Wells, a program from Nick Hill, a program from me, a program from XPE, and run it. Everybody's going to get faster to a certain extent, right? That's the easy part. I think it's the other parts around it that influence the way that somebody runs is going to be very deterministic. Now, like from an actual speed perspective, like there's only three different levers you can pull when you're on field. And I think we use a combination of all these things. So one is resisted running from heavy to light. If we go heavy, we're influencing the early part of the acceleration phase. If we go light, we're influencing later on in the acceleration phase. If we're doing assisted, we're influencing speed. So that's one way. Another way is actual just running, like doing the reps of some different accelerations from different distances at different intensities. And the third part of that would be like the technical piece, which would be the smallest point of it. Like, yeah, we do teach, like we'll teach, I think this year we narrowed it down to 6 drills and that's it. It's switch, triple switch, straight leg bound, ankle dribble, calf dribble, knee dribble, 6 drills. That's it. We use 6 drills and we do them frequently. And we want them to be good at those 6 drills because we've identified they all have transfer. Um, And that's it. It's really, really, really simple. Now, like the complex part is managing the dose response relationship. So it's managing, okay, everyone did the same amount of work, but everyone's going to recover very differently from that work. And how do you adjust based on where people are at? So for example, a good college football setting, a good college football example is like we have 3 guys that are playing in the playoff right now that haven't gotten here yet. We have 20 guys that have started over like 3 weeks ago. So they're on week 3. When the college playoff guys come, they're going to be on week 4 of everyone else's program. So we do the same session. Everyone does the same session. The college football guys are impacted way differently, right? So that same session might be extremely hard for them, whereas for everyone else, it's like relatively stable. So a lot of it has to do with the individual side of how people respond to specific dosages. And we're always manipulating the volume or intensity based around what people can handle. And if you don't track that, it makes it hard. We track it with GPS, you could track it with time, you could track it with RPE, but you need to understand what people are doing from a dose standpoint. And then you need to understand how they're responding. So if you have force weights, great. If you don't, then you could just ask people how you feeling or wellness questionnaires, things like that. So the pro stuff, man, that's I guess I just gave the pro example, like college to pro. It's not that complex. When you look at high school, like let's say I'm in high school or in college and I'm training to get faster for my sport, the number one thing is just exposure. It's like kids tell me all the time, Coach, I want to get faster. I'm like, okay, bet, I got you. What are you doing now to get faster? Nothing really. Well, okay, let's just start there. Let's just do something. It's just like getting stronger. Athletes who are like, I want to get stronger. Well, they go to LA Fitness and they get stronger. Like it's not the best, but at least they're in there doing bicep curls. They're getting somewhat stronger. In this case, it's like for speed, people just avoid it altogether if they're not good at it. So the number one thing is just exposure. So to give you an example of that, we have a soccer club. We have 1,200 girls or 1,200 kids in it, 750 girls in it. And basically, all we do is microdose speed in their warm ups, not drills, not technique. We just say, okay, you're going to warm up and hit 2 or 3 sprints. You're going to warm up and hit 2 or 3 resisted runs. You're going to warm up and hit 2 or 3 straight leg bounds. You're going to warm up like we just get exposure, but we get it 2, 3 times a week. And because of that, like we measure their max velocity every month. We have a 17% improvement across the entire club. And you have this year we have 10 athletes in the national team program now. like age grade all the way through. We have 6 on the senior team. Actually, no, more than 10. I think it's like 15. It's a good amount. But I mean, not saying that speed is the only reason, but like, man, as athletes get to that, relatively elite level of running faster, every quality around them also improved. So I would say starting with exposure and then backing into specific exposure. Like, do you need more max velocity exposure? Do you need more acceleration exposure? So yeah, overall, I mean, I think the process of getting faster is relatively simple. I think it's been packaged and sold in a lot of different complex ways, primarily probably because it sells and it makes money and it looks cool when you sell it. But like I didn't put out speed programs for 5 years on the internet because I was like, man, this shit's too easy. Not too easy, but it's not. It's like I just tell you to repeat the same thing for like 4 weeks and then switch it on week 5 and then you get faster. Like I don't know. That was long winded, but yeah,
No, I
that's
mean,
it.
we covered a lot there. There are a couple questions I have as follow-ups. The first one is we talked about obviously structural being where we start. What's your walk me through a process of how you do this, and then if, like, let's say if you have a strength and conditioning coach like myself or a high school strength and conditioning coach, how do you bucket your athletes when it comes to structurally and, in terms of coming up with, all right, we have these many athletes, this is their anatomy. Obviously, we can't change this. They're going to run different. This is going to inform how we progress. How do you bucket your athletes and then come up with whatever modalities you do
Yeah.
to help impact that?
Yeah, no, for sure. I think there's two parts to this. So one is assessment and one is what you do with the assessment. So the assessment that we use is we do a 4-way hip. So hip internal, external rotation, hip flexion, hip extension. There's a couple ways to get that. You could get that from a goniometer, so you can measure actual internal rotation and external rotation, hip flexion, hip extension. You could use an output, which is like a accelerometer, or the way that I do it, if I'm just with an athlete, is I just do 4 different drills and see how they move and just pass fail. Like, you know what I mean? It's simple. So I do an internal rotation test, like just 90-90, left the heel, big external rotation, 90-90, bring your chest to your thigh, hip flexion, stand and hold the hip extension. I put them in like a long lunge and see if they have lumbar extension or how far they can get that thigh behind their butt. There's table assessments. Like if you have a PT, we now have like 15 people on staff. So there's a lot of, PT people, type people around that do that. So I'm a little bit less involved. But I would say for sprinting specifically, it's the 4-way hip, and then the fifth would be the ankle, is the ankle dorsiflexion. Just need a wall, put your foot 6 inches from the wall, try to touch your knee, see where that angle, that deepest angle is. Keep it simple. Like now bucketing is like, okay, to me it's simple. Like there's only a few ways you can influence how an athlete moves from a structure standpoint. One is before the session, 2 is after the session, 3 is in the weight room, and 4 is like homework. So there's 4 opportunities a day to work on it. And if it's a real problem, we attack it all 4. But like for example, there's this kid, I'm looking at him right now. He's got a hip extension problem. Well, he's working on the hip extension before the session. He's doing some, classical banded distraction hip extension stuff, like nothing crazy. He does a session. After the session, repeats the same thing. When he goes in the weight room, he warms up with some hip extension movements like lunges. His main movement isn't a bilateral squat; it's a hip extension emphasis, like rear foot elevated or a lunge movement. And then when he goes to therapy, he does things to unlock his anterior chain and hip capsule, and that's it. So like you just attack the problem from different directions. I don't really bucket it into these guys are this, these guys are that. It's more so just like we're just gonna improve the hip extension. That's what we're gonna do. Um, yeah, it's structure is more. I think the question that I get all the time is like, who owns the structure piece? Sometimes like our PTs own it. Sometimes our strength coach owns it. Sometimes the speed team owns it. But it's everyone's problem. It's everyone's problem. So everybody needs to attack it in their own lane. And there's ways that you can attack those 5 things consistently. Now, if we're looking at football, like you have the shoulder and the neck and other areas of emphasis that you would focus on, but for me, it's those 5.
Gotcha. You mentioned high speed exposure,
Mhm,
and obviously, the more exposure you get, the faster you're going to get. So if
mhm.
you sprint a lot, you're going to just get faster. How do you manage the work to rest ratio with your athletes in terms of frequency
Yeah, and frequency in session or frequency, like, throughout the week?
throughout the week? Because I know
Okay.
you mentioned like you
Yeah.
had like three days where you were working with women's soccer where they get some sprinting in.
Yeah, yeah.
Have you found better results with microdosing sprint work in warm-ups and then they get some sort of exposure from an
Yeah,
off-season standpoint, or will that be like its own session
yeah.
or a bit of both?
So, I'll see. I found that those young guys, those young athletes can do about 40 hard accelerations a week. So if you think about the 40, you could either do 40 on one day, which probably isn't best, or I could split that up into like 12, 12, 12, or 15, 15, 15, 10, 10, 10, and then, like you could split it up. But I think like people are like, oh, you can't do that every day. When I was working with Arizona, I would see guys run 21 miles per hour on Tuesday, 21 miles per hour on Wednesday, 21 miles per hour on Thursday, consistently. And I know you've seen it too. If you do it in small volumes, you can spread it out, and it's okay to repeat it. Um, but I think it's around like 40 hard accelerations a week. Now, you're gonna have a ton of like little ones. Like if you're looking at GPS and you're being critical of this, I would say like above 4 meters per second squared. What I would say is more intensive. Like 3 meters per second squared is not going to qualify as a hard acceleration for me. 4 meters per second squared plus. So you spread that throughout the week. And like even with these guys, my combine guys, we just increase the density of high speed exposure to 3 days versus 2 days. I used to do Monday, Thursday. So I have a big day Monday, big day Thursday. Well, now I have the same amount of reps. I just put it across 3 days. I didn't change. I do about 40 reps. I just put it across 3 days. And in the warm up, I do 3 accelerations. And the bridge, which is like the bridge between the warm up and the session, I do about 3. And then in the session, I do about 8. And that's it. You know, hit 3 in the warm up, 3 in the mix of bridge, and then about 8, sometimes 10, like real accelerations in terms of testing or whatever it is. So, and I got that from Stu. Like I was watching Stu do acceleration Monday, speed on Tuesday, Wednesday regen, acceleration Thursday, speed on Friday. I was like, how do you do that? And he's like, well, I did the same volume I was doing before. I just spread it across these days. I'm like, oh shit, that's pretty cool, So if we want to get somebody fast, quick, then we need to increase the density of our training. If there's a risk or if there's like, they can't handle the volume, then we'll spread it across, you know, 2 bigger days and just build into it. But I like the 3 days because it's our session today was 55 minutes for the combine, NFL combine, 55 minutes. That's it. Our bigs took longer because they had bigger breaks and they went 64 minutes, but you don't need more than an hour. And that's including, I mean, we did start tech, we did 1080, we did timing, we did view motion, you know, that's everything. So it doesn't have to be these hour and a half, you know, 2 hour sessions. Like it's easy. Couple of things here, a
So,
couple of things here and go.
question for you with the way he's broken that down, it sounds to me like Monday acceleration, Tuesday max velo. I'm just clarifying that for the people that are listening.
Yeah, that's for Stu. Yeah,
Okay. Okay.
yeah, yeah. I don't do that. I don't have track athletes that can handle that, but
Okay.
yeah, he does.
I I want to know. So obviously we've had some talks about combine extensively, which is a very specific skill set for speed. I know that I've looked at videos where you're dealing with, let's say, soccer players, different other types of players that are not necessarily testing for a combine, but may have other things going on. So, such as in a situation like let's say Division 3 or high school or NAIA or whatever, you have a football player who may not necessarily be training for a combine, but they're trying to get faster, but they have other things that are happening throughout the week, such as, let's say, conditioning, which is a little bit more, uh, especially as you get closer to spring ball. How does your dosing change and your strategy change for athletes like that? Because I know what we're seeing is kind of what a vacuum would look like for a combine athlete, but transitioning to your off-season athlete, what is your approach in terms of
Yeah.
trying to make sure we get that transition in terms of speed?
Yeah. So it's a complicated answer because there's tons of different outcomes. So for example, like if you're looking at college football, you would have to look through the position lens of what are receivers doing from a high speed yardage standpoint? What are DBs doing? What are my linemen doing? You would have to work backwards from that to start gradually increasing that exposure to that, to get to relatively around 80% plus of that. Now, if I'm just like simply thinking about it, like I think about it this way. My the speed work that I'm doing typically from an intensity standpoint is relatively the same across all the sports. I'll start to increase my high speed yardage by doing something on more extensive days. So like tempo work, I'll increase my high speed yardage. My very high speed yards though aren't going to really be that different because like when you look at how much yardage athletes hit over 90% consistently throughout a week, in most sports it's not crazy. It's not crazy amounts. Those are things you could do in 1 or 2 days of training. It's not going to really differ from sport to sport unless I decide like basketball players aren't going to do a lot of max speed. But when I'm training my soccer guys and my NFL guys in the summer, a lot of them are in the same session. The extensive work is different though. So the extensive work for the receivers is we get a lot more high speed yardage when we do tempos or we do high speed running sessions and all those things outside of the speed work. Whereas the soccer players are going to do more aerobic, extensive, slower work. So they're not getting as much. But what I do is I work backwards from what the requirement is. So like I had a receiver I worked with for 4.5 years, and basically we would get his camp kind of like schedule, and it would say like, this practice 90 minutes, this practice 70 minutes. And I had some relative GPS data. So I could kind of predict like, okay, well, this session's going to be about 3,500 yards. This session's going to be like 5,500 yards. And then we work backwards to figure out how much high speed running he would basically accumulate in a week. And we just worked up to 85% of that every summer. So we take from after the Super Bowl all the way through OTAs and mini camp, all the way through the summer up to training camp. And we would just build up to 85% gradually, slowly in different ways. And we would get more and more specific as we went. But honestly, I think it's like when people ask about the intensity stuff, like like the speed work is like, we don't really do high doses of it because games don't have very high dosages of it unless you're in a sport like rugby sevens where you might have massive amounts of very high speed distance. But the very high speed side of things, I think, is more of a raise the ceiling, get the athlete faster, whatever it takes to get the athlete faster, whatever that volume is. And then everything under that, you're kind of reserving that for more extensive work on other days. It sometimes comes through the sport, sometimes comes through tempo runs, sometimes it comes through positional tempos and things like that. But I don't think that you need to match yard for yard on the very, very high speed distance side of things. Yeah.
Field versus obviously court. Obviously, there's a difference in terms of the running mechanic. I'm not so much the running mechanics, but
Mm,
I noticed that training speed for a basketball player is obviously different from training speed for a football player,
mhm,
just based on their spacing.
mhm.
How do you approach that if you're talking to a coach and you're trying to give them best practices?
Yeah. So I worked in the NBA, couple training camps. I learned a ton, especially getting data. Like now the NBA has like, so kind of like the Hawkeye type things, like video data. And then now I think they can use wearables a little bit more. Tons of accelerations, micro accelerations, micro decelerations. But the only like high speed stuff comes in transition work. and it comes in like a rebound. They push the ball up the court, but it's not like it's still submaximal in terms of like percentages and things like that. You will see a lot of aggressive accelerations though. But I think like there's two ways to think about it. It's like, okay, well, they don't do it in their sport, so they don't need it. I disagree. It's like, well, do they hang clean on the court? No. Is it valuable? It could be. Like, I don't know. Do they squat, lunge, hinge, press? Not with weight, but is it valuable? Yeah, it's to me, it's a training modality. How much exposure do they need? Minimal. I think the reactive component, like we treat speed like a weight room exercise. It's the fastest thing your body can do. Yeah, it's the fastest limb velocities, the fastest, all those things. Like, yeah, I think that's perfect. It's a really good modality for you to get exposure with. But I think the primary emphasis on this should be getting acceleration, deceleration exposure for the athletes. And not necessarily from a teaching standpoint. Like a lot of these dudes have crazy long limb lengths and crazy hard. You start changing mechanics and things, you might see little injury things pop up out of nowhere. I think the main course for this is just exposure, especially into warm ups. I remember warming up for basketball when I was, eighth through 11th grade, and you run a mile. They set a timer. You run whatever 16 laps around the court. You do a couple half court shuttles, and that's it. Like I think there's a massive opportunity in warm ups to dose in some acceleration, some resisted accelerations, things like that. But I think it's relatively simple. Like I don't think you have to match the demand of the sport. I just think it's something you use in the warm up to potentiate for the sport and teach athletes how to accelerate and decelerate, and then decelerate in different vectors and change directions in different vectors. I think that covers most of it. I'm watching how basketball players move. It's like they're extremely athletic. They're just, if you were to go in there technically and try to change things, it's like doing surgery on an ant. It's like it's gonna be hard. Good
Yeah,
luck, Best of luck to you. So
gotcha. I have one more question for you, which is something that is, I think, a hot topic in strength and conditioning. In season speed training.
mhm.
Your thoughts, best practices. Some people are for it, some people are against it. Some coaches are against it, I think, because they feel that the game gives them that exposure.
Yeah,
Overdoing it could potentially occur. Obviously, we're not talking about, now let me just also caveat this. Not everybody that hears this is going to have a catapult. So obviously there are some things that occur when you have catapult technology. You're able to tell, okay, has this running back or receiver seen high speed yards this week? Did he get any snaps? No. Okay. Well, then he goes and runs some sprints so we can make sure he gets that exposure. That's not what I'm talking about. What I'm talking about is like where you're seeing formalized drilled speed sessions in season. What are your
yeah,
thoughts?
yeah. I mean, I'm clearly biased. It's very similar to the conversation with Al Vermeil and the Bulls in the 90s or maybe 80s, where he started doing strength work with the guys. And there was like a bunch of talk like, should strength work be done in season for basketball? Well, now it's like everyone does it. And I think speed is getting to that point where it's like, should we do it? Well, the first part of it is the truth is most sports you don't get exposure. I had a receiver, the same receiver I worked with, continue to work with, year 5 now. He doesn't he rarely gets above 80%, 85% in game, and he scores touchdowns a lot. Like he balls. Like he's not like a bum, he's fast. But the game is played below 85% most of the game. Most of the game. You look at those bands of high speed stuff, you see it in practice sometimes because they run routes on air and they do stuff that forces them to get exposure. But if they didn't do that, the game doesn't provide it. Sometimes practice does. So I could see the camp where it's like we can get it in practice, but unless you have a head coach that buys into it, that believes in giving longer, like, hey, we're going to do a couple reps with longer breaks and then with less space on a bigger open field, it's very unlikely you'll get it. So I think speed is something that we look at as separate from strength. It's the same thing. It's just on a continuum. It's like you need exposure from all those. You need strength exposure. We're clear on that. You need acceleration exposure. We're clear on that. You need speed exposure. We're clear on that. Now, if speed is covered, let's say, I mean, I've worked with the team before, legit, like they hit speeds in practice all the time. Practice was fast and it was short and it was really cool. What did they not? What did they not get? They didn't get intense accelerations and they didn't get resist. Like the only way to improve your acceleration, truthfully, like from a physical standpoint, is do it resisted, run up a hill, something like that. Like you need some resisted exposure for it's a strength based exercise. Like it's like you don't get better at broad jumping from just broad jumping. You have to resist it or do something different. So um yeah, like I think that if you get the speed exposure, then you need to resist it, excel. If you're not getting either, you need to do both. Just like in the weight room, you need a heavy stimulus every X amount of days. You need a reactive stimulus every X amount of days. Whatever your philosophy is on that stuff, you know. I think it's the same, similar for speed. I've worked every team I've worked with, we've implemented in-season speed, and the biggest outcome wasn't like, oh, everyone got faster. Although like teams do get faster, we've run the same play over and over and over again. It's almost a layup. And I'm like, teams win more, teams are faster. Cool. That wasn't the biggest outcome. The biggest outcome is getting calls from the head PT, head ATC, head of medical. Man, like I'm bored. No one comes into the training room anymore. No one's hurt. Or like we've reduced our soft tissues by 45, 50% or whatever it is. Yeah, that's the outcome. And I think from a health perspective, you look at it as like, okay, getting faster is not necessarily the goal in season. And you got to switch your mindset to the actual in season goal is actually
Tailoring.
health.
Yeah.
It's health. And I have a player right now that is, I mean, I don't think I'm very fast anymore, but I'm faster than him. I'm faster than him. I know, like, if we race today, you put up $100, I'm winning. I am winning. He makes $30 million a year. And I'm like, I do not make $30 million a year.
I'm faster than you.
Not even close. And so it's not like I'm trying to get this dude to be faster. I'm just making sure this dude stays on the field and stays healthy. And I do that through exposure. We're exposing you to above the demand of what's required of you to play your sport from acceleration standpoint and above the demand is required for your sport on the speed side. So that when you experience those things in a game, number one, your body's like foreign substance, not good. Let's just shut everything down. And it recognizes that, hey, I can do this. I'm good. Yeah. So that's literally the play we've been running. Now Danny Foley and I just launched this, like, it's crazy how this happened, but basically we just launched this like remote program for our pro athletes. And we were like, we're going to take 10 athletes and we're going to put insoles in their shoes that track everything. So their acceleration, deceleration, speed, how their, foot is hitting the ground, everything. We're going to make them fill out a wellness questionnaire every single morning. And then we're going to send them like stuff to do every day. We were like, start with 10. We had 10 of them signed up in the first week. And we've been rolling with this thing. And what we're seeing is like, whoa, like they are severely underexposed in a lot of these intensity categories during the season. You watch TV and you think like, oh man, like these dudes are going hard all week. Not necessarily. Like, especially not this deep into the playoffs in the NFL or this deep into the season in the EPL or this deep into the season in the MLS. Like, you kind of are in maintenance mode, and the sessions of your sport get less and less intense as you start to taper and get towards championship, playoff, whatever. But your work as an athlete individually, you still need you're going to experience intensity on the weekend. So the peaks actually become higher and further away from what you're doing on a daily basis. And it actually disrupts homeostasis significantly more because you're not doing it on a consistent basis. So what we found is like basically hijacking that process and inserting intensity in different places throughout the week based on around your readiness and based around your game schedule and based around how you're responding to stress and all that. We've put two American soccer players into top 5 categories, top 5 soccer players in the world in the course of a year. And we're like,
Mhm.
nothing nothing crazy changed other than we just started doing that and their game is speed. So anyway, that's long-winded, but
That's very interesting.
1000%, 1000%. Yeah.
That's very interesting. Wow. Okay. Well, that brings uh I do you have time for one more question?
Yeah, 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 of course.
Last one, because you actually kind of got my brain firing off. When it comes to translation from a weight room standpoint, we're seeing a lot. You see this a lot on social media, different forms of triphasic training.
Yeah,
You're seeing a
yeah.
lot of people implementing isometrics, specifically when it comes to tissue preparation for skill guys and for high speed people, just to try to keep them healthier. So when they get that speed exposure, the tissues are ready. I'm just curious what your thoughts are on that.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think Cal and those guys were years and years ahead of their time when it comes to that. I have a little bit of a different opinion, not than them. Like I think their opinion is great, but when I think about if I were to return you back from an ACL, I would probably start with like yielding isometrics, like not pushing it's an immovable object, but holding weight, increasing the weight, increasing the time, the duration, time under tension, building tissues, all that stuff. And then I would move into more of an overcoming where I'm pushing its immovable object, high force, that type of work. And then I would probably move to like a more ballistic option from that. So like that would be kind of my isometric. That would be the first thing. And then I would probably move into slow eccentrics where it'll be like tempo based, not super heavy, but tempo based. I mean, for multiple reasons, but like fascicle length, tissue quality, all those things. And then I would move more from tempo into like accelerated eccentrics, or I'll move into like overloaded eccentrics. I would move into reflexive eccentrics. And I'll just kind of move up towards the pyramid to like the point where, we're healthy again and you get more RFD as you get closer to it, go from impulse to RFD. So I think when I think about it, is like that's if you were coming back from an injury. Now, there's not really too big of a difference between, re- you know, return to play and just basic performance. Like every year, you might be healthy, but you come back from playing in a season like you're not really healthy. Like you still need tissue quality. So I just kind of start literally my athletes as if they were doing a return to play, just a little bit higher volume and a little bit more. I'll start with my, yielding, and I move to overcoming, and move to ballistic, and then I move to tempo, and then I move to accelerated, and then I move to overloaded, and then I move to reflexive eccentrics, and then I moved more towards RFD, and it works. I don't know if I'm right, but kind of do isometric, eccentric, and then concentric. I don't really do a lot of concentric work, to be honest with you. But I think there's ways to influence the system in different ways than we've previously thought. So I like Hunter Eisenhower's model, where it's like I have a high force day, and that high force day is how do I produce high forces? Is it going to be high load or high speed? In the beginning, I start basically with tempo, or basically building up to high load, and then I go to build up to high speed, and then I have fast force, and fast force is going to be like my reflexive eccentrics, my ballistic isos, those types of things. Sorry, the high force would be like overcoming isos. The fast force would be like ballistic isos, and then I have my slow force day, which is going to be like tendon remodeling, tissue remodeling, all those types of things, and that's going to be tempo based, eccentric, slower eccentric. I like machines for this day sometimes. Like that would be more yielding isometric. So I kind of blend it all, but like I think my emphasis is still go based around like my return to play model of where I put the emphasis on those things. And we're doing that now with our combine guys. Like when we do a slow force day, they're like, man, this is therapeutic. Like I leave this session, I feel better than when I started the session. Those high force days and those fast force days. Well, high force days, you don't feel great after, it's high force. The nervous system has a big recovery from that. The fast forward stage, they feel like, man, I feel really bouncy. I feel good. I feel ready to go. Yeah. So like I've been playing around with that, just switching the model. Like my old model was like very, I don't know, I don't know what to call it. Joe DeFranco, West Side Barbell, so that was my old model where I was like
Dynamic
max,
day,
yeah, max effort,
yeah, I got
dynamic,
you.
yeah, yeah. And I guess it's not too far away from that still, but it's like there's some nuances in there that are different. But I don't know. I'm still playing around. I'll report back to you at the end of this process and let you know if that shit worked or not.
That would be interesting. I
Yeah,
mean, because
yeah,
I love Louis Simmons and the stuff he's done. I think
same
it's just the only thing about that conjugate method. I think it works depending on how many athletes and how many teams you're coaching
for
and
sure,
how many coaches you have,
for
because
sure.
it does require a little bit more hands-on approach.
Yeah,
If you're a director of strength conditioning and you're listening to this and you have several sports, this may be a bit more challenging for you versus if you're just a particular sport director of strength conditioning
yeah, for
to
sure,
be able to
for
implement that.
sure.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, Les, thank you so much. Again, you guys, this is part 2. We really were I wanted to get him on Talk Shop. Every time I'm on the phone, I'm on a call, I'm on a Zoom with this guy, I learned something. So to me, this is an opportunity for me to be a student. I'm hoping that everyone that hops on this podcast will just learn. Les, I just appreciate you for being an open book, man. Like you
Man,
give
thank you,
so
bro.
much
Appreciate it.
information out here. I listen to you on Team Builder and you just give you your flowers, man, for just
I
being willing to
appreciate
just
that.
share knowledge. Cause a lot of times people are guarded and you've been very open with just sharing things that you know, sharing things you don't know. You're like, hey man, I'm just I'll figure it out. I'll let you know. But
Yeah, no, I
just
appreciate that. I know I'm wrong sometimes. I appreciate that. Yeah,
Hey
for
man, but
sure.
I just appreciate your willingness to hop on with us. And again, if you guys are trying to find Les, how do they find you again? Just in case you didn't
Last seven Spellman, Instagram, Twitter. Shit, I'll give you my number. You just hit me, anytime.
tap in with him. He's knee deep in combine work right now, but again, definitely check out his a lot of his products he has when it comes to speed school. He's top of the line coach, so you can learn a
Yes,
lot
sir.
from this gentleman, man. So I appreciate it. Les,
Appreciate you,
thank you
man.
again, and thank you guys again for hopping on the AAPCA podcast. This is Les Spillman Part 2. Again, good luck with combine, man,
Thank you, bro.
and we'll touch
I'm in the
base
trenches. All
in the
right,
trenches.
peace.
That's what it's about, man. Hey,
Peace,
you
bro.
guys
Thank
take
you.
care. Have a good one.
Bye.